So the Scrambler is now back up on the table. I'm going to do some more work to it, and one thing that I did notice when I took it down last time was I just wasn't happy with its stance. It sat too low in the back end, and as you can probably see if you've got a keen eye, I've changed the shock absorbers at the rear. The whole thing's been changed to a higher shock absorber. Now what they are, these guys, they're a 370 milliliter no, not liquid, Dan. They're a 370 millimeter eye-to-eye shock absorber. What that's done is obviously put a lot more of an angle on the actual swing arm. It's a trial and error thing. I know it's going to put a lot more stress on the uni joint. If it may or may not, I don't know. It's one of those things. Just let's try it, see how it goes. When I put my bum on this, it drops down a little bit, not much, but it does correct that swing arm just ever so slightly. So I don't know if it's going to work, but it does look a hell of a lot better being flat, as you can see through here. Still not perfectly flat, but it's a CX. I can't put any more height into that rear without obviously doing a complete subframe, chopping it, and then, you know, doing the monoshock thing, which is what I'll probably do with the other CX. But what I'm about to start working on now is the actual luggage rack, because I need to figure out how this guy's going to sit on here so that I can work out what sort of tail light I'm going to put on there as well. Just something I'm just going to try and figure out. I've got a few tail light ideas. I was originally going to go with a nice round one and, you know, just be like the standard Scrambler look, but I have something else in mind. So I'll work on this actual luggage rack that goes around the back here. It's never going to look awesome because it is a luggage rack. It's not meant to be on these bikes, you know, unless you're obviously going camping, which is what I'm going to do. So the material that I'm going to be using is this stuff here. It's a solid stainless steel 8mm, and as you can see, I've had to go at bending it a couple of times just to sort of see the sort of radius that I want. And the reason I'm using this, I could use anything from aluminium or I guess probably not aluminium because it's a bit soft, but if I was to use aluminium I'd use a heavier gauge, but stainless steel because I've got it. I bought a bunch of it when I was doing the actual mounting for the front fender on the CB750. So that's what I have here, and it's not really that expensive, and I'm going to make it so it's going to be super strong. These bends, I was originally just going to get a bit of pipe and put a bit of pipe, like let's say for instance like that, and put that in a vise and then bend around that, just with obviously having another piece in the vise so I can have something to bend it around. That was my original plan, but how I've actually bent these guys is with an actual universal bender. I decided I'd bite the bullet and I'd actually buy one because I'm going to use it quite a bit for, you know, just various things with these bikes. So what it is, it's this guy here. It turned out to be a lot bigger than I expected. I've just mounted it in my my Triton Super Jaws. These things are awesome. Obviously if you're going to bend anything too heavy duty, this won't work, but because it's obviously not bolted to anything. But the way I've got it, I can sort of, you know, stand on that side there and sort of put my foot, I guess, over here and sort of support it as I'm pulling it through, and it just seems to not move. So this is what I'm going to do. Quick explanation on as to how this thing works. This piece here comes out, you can actually interchange these. They come with a few different sizes, and this is the radius that you've got to look at, which is what the piece is going to be bent around. So you get the piece that you're obviously going to bend. Let's say for instance I'm going to bend that there, throw that in place. So this here is adjustable, and this just brings this in here. So this brings it close to your workpiece. So you just tighten it up, not completely so tight that it's squeezed it, but just so it's touching. And this here is a cam which just locks it in place, just sort of keeps it there. And then you grab your arm and then bend it around, and it'll bend around this radius. However, the problem that I had, because this is obviously, I guess, a cheap set, you can see the imperfections in that radius. It's really like, it's not smooth around here. So I'm seeing that in the bends. So as you can see from the previous ones that I've just done a test run on, it's a nice radius till about here, and then it just straightens out. It's just following whatever this is. So I'm going to fix this. I'm just going to get this, take it over to the belt grinder, and then grind that down so that it's a really, really nice curve. So if you don't have one of these, you don't want to get one of these, you just want to do this once off, then there's other ways to do it. Like I said, you can get yourself a couple of pieces of pipe and you can bend it around the pipe, and I'll show you a picture right now of what I'm talking about, because something like this is going to do exactly the same thing and get you the same result. It's just the only reason I purchased this is because I'm going to be using it more than once, obviously. So hopefully that helps. Let's get into fixing this die. So this was the last bend that I just did. It looks a lot better. What I did was pretty much keep this touching all the way through till about there, and then I noticed that it wasn't going to go right angle. It just would not bend that last little bit. It was sitting out a little bit. So what I did was I actually backed this off just ever so slightly so it wasn't touching here and it was actually touching back here, and then pushed it, and as I did that, I think it's like kinked it. When I say kink, I mean, I'll take it down and show you. So as you can see, that's it there. You can see it's almost perfectly nice, I guess, radius till about there, and then you can see that last little bit where it just doesn't sit right. So I'm going to tweak it and play with it and try and get it to work perfectly to get a nice bend. I don't even know if I'm going to be doing a right angle on this, but I just want to try and get it to look as best I can. Quick change of plans here. I found some 10mm mild steel solid, so instead of using the stainless, I'm going to use this. This stuff's like dirt cheap. So, all right, let's get into it. So pretty much last night, the last thing I did was tack these guys on, and then I stood back and kind of looked at it and realized that, you know, I'm never going to be able to get this, obviously the seat off, because it comes up like this first, unless I space this back, which I could possibly do. But the more I looked at it, I was kind of umming and ahhing about this particular shape because it just doesn't follow anything. It still looks cool, don't get me wrong, I do like it, but I just don't know if it fits with the shape of this just yet. So what I'm thinking about doing, and it's just tacked together, so what I'm thinking about doing is slightly changing this design, and I still have the die that when I made the actual hoop for this custom hoop, I still have the plywood die that I made to make that. So what I'm going to do is use this to obviously get a bit of this round bar. I'll put a bit of round bar in like this, clamp it, and then just bend around that, which will give me almost the exact shape that I need to sort of mimic the back of this seat. And that should look a lot better, I think. And then I can sort of just make sure it sits out far enough, which will allow me enough room to get that seat off. Because the last thing I would want to do is build this and then find that it's, you can't get the seat out unless you actually take this off, which you wouldn't do. This whole style could completely change from what it is right now, but I guess this is what bike building is. You just got to come up with something that in your head, what you originally thought was going to look good might not look good on the bikes. So after bending this guy here, I put it in place to see what it was going to look like, and wasn't totally sold on it. I don't think that's going to look that great. It's really hard to know. You have to sort of play with it and put it in position, weld it up, stand back, look at it. I did have a go at a completely different design, which is obviously this here, which is having a rounded tail section and then rounded around the actual seat. That is another design, but it's just one of those processes you've just got to go through. And I thought about it and I'm like, maybe I should make something out of TIG filler rod, like this stuff here. I've got plenty of it, so I was thinking about just getting some of this and actually making the design, because this stuff bends fairly easy. And you know, you can get it to the shape that you want and then pretty much go from there and then design your whole thing, or cut it out of timber. You know, cut your design out of timber and manipulate it. If you've got a lot of, you know, this sort of stuff floating around, then, you know, you can sort of put it there, stand back, look at it and see if you like it. Sometimes it's one of those things that you have to make, create it, and then go away, come back the next day, and then just, because if you're staring at it like you do when you're actually designing it, it looks good at the time, but then it doesn't look so good when you've pretty much finished it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep playing with this design. This is my original design, so I'll keep playing with it. I might even finish it and complete it, and then if I am still not happy with how it's turned out, I'll make another one. It's not really that hard. It's quite fun to do. I've been looking forward to doing this because it's actually quite a fun little thing, a little project, which is an add-on to the bike. It's not actually part of the bike. It's, you know, obviously it's going to be bolted on. So yeah, I'm going to keep playing with it and see what I come up with. So I just finished making these guys. They're just roughly shaped. This is going to be in a position facing up towards the mounting as the mounting comes down, but they're just kind of like a, I guess almost like a teardrop, but not really. I've just put those on there. This is just balancing. This guy here has just been tacked on in the middle. The reason I put that on there is just so that I can get this level this way, so that I can stand back and just kind of, you know, eye it up the way I want it to sit. I'm probably going to cut it around here somewhere and then put in a new piece that I make just to transition into it nicely, rather than, obviously there's a join here and I could weld that up and clean it up, but I just want something a little bit more the shape that I want, so to speak. Trip hazard much. It's a bit out of control when you're working away and you're just in a hurry to get things done, but I need to sort this out soon so I don't trip over. So these little guys that I've just made, there's a right and a left, as you can see, like that. They are identical, as much as you can get identical when you're making things by hand. What they're for is to do two things. To obviously support, to put another support down here and mount it, because I've got nothing to mount it to. I don't want to drill into the frame. I didn't want anything right at the very back. So what I've decided to do is make these, and I'm going to weld them on up under here like this. And they're going to mount the actual mudguard. I'm going to put a hole straight through where my thumb is. Obviously I'm going to move my thumb first. So I'm going to put a hole straight through there. That's going to hold the mudguard. And then it's also going to be a support for this. So that's what they're for. I just thought I'd explain that before I kept going. Slippery little suckers. You almost need like 3 hands. How handy would that be? Pun intended. Actually, no, it wasn't. So I'm going to call it a night. I'm pretty much finished with this right now. There's just a couple more things that I was going to do. It ended up being a lot more Jurassic Park roll bar looking than I expected. I wasn't initially going to do a design like this, but it just happened. I just started doing the process of designing, and that's what I ended up with. I'm happy with it. It's going to be super strong. The two things that I need to do is make a mounting down here, so I'm going to get a piece of plate and then obviously drill a hole through it and then weld it to the end of this down here, and then that will be the mounting point for there. These mounting points may change. At this stage I'm just going to leave them for now because will they work, but if I do change them I'll show you what I'm doing. This one has been notched out. I didn't notch out the other side, I only notched out one, and it's just to release it on this side so then I can actually take it off on that side. It's kind of spring loaded, so it's going to be difficult to get off if I didn't do that. So that's one thing that I didn't mention that I did do, and the only other thing I've got to do now is obviously weld it all out and then obviously paint it. So I had a lot of fun with it. Hopefully you learnt a little bit from that one, because I know I sure did. Anyway, have an amazing day and I'll chat with you in the next video.